Hello, everyone, and many thanks for your attention for joining this stream. And of course, many thanks to all the members of our community who will join later on or will watch video of this stream in a recording. Today is 16th of July. Now it's 11 o'clock in the morning, Moscow time. And as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media and public is paying attention to. And I hope you will find this episode uh, interesting and useful, better than yesterday's episode, because I guess yesterday's my update was not liked by nobody because project did not receive even a single donation or the tip. Hopefully I will do today a little better than that. So yes, as always, dear friends, first goes news segment, and after news segment we will have some short, like 15, 20, 30-minute community chat. Let's have exchange of opinions in real time. But first goes news update. And well, I will start with this report that last night Russian armed forces launched quite a large-scale long-range strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime. Explosions were heard in Kryvyi Rog, Vinnytsia, Kharkov, Kramatorsk, number of other directions. And among targets, there was also Izium city, by the way, in Odessa region. Let me show you this area. City is located on Danube River, and together with other cities on the Danube from Odessa region are actively used by NATO for weapons shipments, right? And I guess some significant weapon shipments were happening during the previous 24 to 48 hours, and the Russian armed forces find it necessary to conduct a strike in direction of Izium. Last time I heard about strikes in this area was at least a couple of months ago, I guess. So hopefully this strike was successful, and NATO and the Kiev regime lost a significant number of military equipment and munition. Later on today, Russian Defense Ministry most likely will give us an update on this night long-range strikes. Also, dear friends, we have this report from Zlad newspaper that Ukrainian armed forces lost their elite regiment Skala in the Kharkov region almost completely. So the elite Skala regiment of the armed forces of Ukraine suffered critical losses in the Kharkov direction, losing its combat capability after fighting in Milovo area. The airborne assault regiment Skala of the armed forces of Ukraine has effectively ceased to exist as a combat unit on the Kharkov direction, according to sources of the TASS news agency. And of course, this is a good news for Russia and bad news for NATO and its terrorist proxies in Kiev. One less so-called elite formations in hands of Russian enemies. RIA Novosti and dear friends, of course, media outlets all over the world are now talking about this ultimatum that Trump issued towards Russia day before yesterday, about some 50 days during the which Russia should capitulate, basically, under pressure of the West, or and there is a question: what if not, right? And everybody is speculating now. What will U.S. do if Russia will just ignore this ultimatum? I mean, long-range deliveries of long-range weapon systems, being ATACMS or JSSM cruise missiles or anything else, will unfortunately have some impact. Some of those missiles, if deployed, probably will manage to bypass our defense systems, 1, 2, 3% from whatever number will be launched. And that will be definitely issue. But in military terms, obviously, long-range strikes not not gonna turn the tide on the battlefield. We all understand that Russia conducts long-range strikes with quite often hundreds of weapon systems, drones, missiles, and so on quite regular basis. But these long-range strikes are not the means, or not the only means that can achieve a victory on the battlefield, right? Modern warfare works in a different manner, and after all, we have an example of Yemen, isn't it? Saudi Arabia, UAE, and then US, UK, and Israel were bombing this country and continue to bomb for last, like, I don't know, 10, 11 years. And did they achieve much with these long-range bombings? Not really, right? It does harm, makes harm, right? Of course, generates significant issues, casualties, but long-range strikes not going to turn the tide. It's not works like that. So therefore, many experts, many media outlets are speculating what White House or the collective West can come up after these 50 days that will force Russia to submission, right? All sorts of speculations. I will give you my take on that in a couple of minutes. But we have statement from Lindsey Graham, by the way, on this very topic, U.S. Warhawk, so-called senator, and look what he has to say on the matter. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, who is on Russia's list of extremists and terrorists, said that Iranian Ayatollah Khamenei could answer all those who are hesitant about what will happen to Russia on their 51st day since US President Donald Trump began counting down the days until the conclusion of the deal on Ukraine. So basically, Lindsey Graham, I don't know, on behalf of Trump, on behalf of Pentagon, on behalf of CIA, or just on his own behalf, but clearly threatening Russia with the bombings, right? With US bombings. Because we all remember Trump sort of issued a 2-month ultimatum to Iran to agree on US demands. Iran refused, and on 61st day, allegedly it was the 61st day, when US conducted when US basically authorized their military campaign against Iran, which will go down in history as a 12-day Israeli-Iran war, right? And the US itself get engaged and conducted their strikes on Iran, right? Iran's nuclear facilities. And so this is direct threat, isn't it? Lindsey Graham, unfortunately, even though he's being taken as a clown by many, but unfortunately, forces that are behind the Lindsey Graham are clearly powerful, right? They are very much able to manipulate with Trump. And maybe we don't like this, but we should, pay attention to what this warmonger psychopath is saying. And maybe, by the way, Pentagon, White House, and CIA are really considering NATO strikes on Russia, because US, UK, France, these are NATO countries, right? So maybe they really are working on scenarios that they're going to bomb Russia, by the way, directly. Not through their proxy key regime while maintaining plausible deniability in their hands, but directly. Which will mean, of course, Third World War straight away and full-scale nuclear exchange and the end of humanity. And unfortunately, because there is no journalists left in US MSM, no one is challenging this senator, and no one is asking question why he is being talking about World War III and potentially end of humanity with this ease. What is wrong with him, right? Because that's what he's talking about, right? About direct strikes on Russia, which is a full-scale nuclear war and the end of humanity. Death of 8-9 billion humans. That's the level of degeneration that US political class is experiencing, by the way, right? Nevertheless, also speculations are circulating on the internet about what kind of long-range weapon systems Kyiv regime will receive. basically we have at least partial confirmation that most likely ATACMS missiles will be transferred by US to launch against Russia. Potentially, long-range modernized ATACMS missiles that will have a longer range than ordinary ones. So that means range of these ATACMS could be up to 500 kilometers and potentially even more. Reports even are, by the way, that White House now is considering, or Trump is considering, to allow long-range strikes deep into Russian territory, although this report that is coming from Western media is kind of contradicting to everything that we already know. These long-range strikes deep into Russian territory already been authorized by Biden, right? And there was no reports that this authorization was canceled or something. So I don't think Trump needs to authorize what already is being authorized, right? And U.S. militaries, unfortunately, U.S. militaries and U.S. intelligence were striking deep into Russian territory with the ATACMS missiles hundreds of times. And I say hundreds of times because allegedly about 500 ATACMS missiles were delivered on Kiev-controlled territory, and most of it already being used. A couple of weeks ago, I saw reports in Western media that Kiev only had like 30 to 50 ATACMS missiles left, right? So yes, one of the weapon systems that Kiev regime will receive for formally Kiev regime, in reality, of course, we all understand that it's US, it's NATO that will use these missile systems, right? It's ATACMS, and another one is JSSM, and the Western media is reporting that Trump is allegedly hesitant to agree on a transfer of these missile systems, but because Trump was engaged, basically since he took the office, he was constantly engaged in disinformation operations, in deception operations, together with whoever is blackmailing him, whoever is in control of him, Israeli lobby, Zionists, globalists, or whomever, because he was constantly lying with whomever he was negotiating. Therefore, when Trump said, or when reports says in Western media that Trump is kind of hesitant to transfer JSSM cruise missiles to Kiev, that is a lie. Most likely that is a lie, and it is very much possible that these missiles already are either in Eastern Europe or maybe even on the Kiev-controlled territory. And these missiles, by the way, there are several types of these JSSM missiles, and their advanced modifications have range up to 1,000 kilometers. And what is also important to keep in mind that F-16, US-made F-16 fighter jets that Kiev regime, formerly Kiev regime, in reality NATO, has its in disposal on Kiev-controlled territory, are integrated with their JSSM, so they can launch these missiles without any extra additional work on the planes, right? So this is also something to keep in mind there. And Trump, by the way, himself went to say that weapons already heading to Ukraine. They've been transferred from Germany and some other places, and it will be better if we will just listen to his statement itself. Just a sec, dear friends, and I give you his.
Is coming in from Germany and then replaced by Germany, and in all cases, the United States gets paid back in full.
Have you started?
What's happening, as you know, is the European Union, if you look, mostly European Union stuff, but let's put it in the form of NATO. It's very similar. But NATO is going to pay us back for everything. In some cases, we're going to be paid back by countries of the European Union directly.
So Germany will take on most of the burden when it comes to these U.S. weapons. Seems like at least that's kind of intention that Washington has. that Germany will pay for everything. But at this point, speculations that we are hearing is about Patriot batteries, right? And as you know, 2 days ago, when Trump was issuing this ultimatum to Russia, he was talking about a country that might transfer 17 Patriot batteries, right? And media began speculating which country that might be. And there are kind of answer. We have kind of answer on that. So Switzerland, by the way, may be the country that could sell 17 Patriot systems for transfer to Ukraine, according to New York Times, according to Western propaganda outlet. So Switzerland has no need for Patriot systems. The article also says that US currently has about 60 systems out of about 180 in the world, and so much for status of neutrality for Switzerland, isn't it? Of course, Russia no longer considers Switzerland to be a neutral state, but and for objective reasons, by the way, so many Swiss weapon systems or weapon systems with Swiss equipment had been destroyed already on the battlefield. That come on, man. And Switzerland is joining all anti-Russian steps that collective West is taking. So therefore, in no universe, Switzerland could be considered as a neutral. But nevertheless, at least Bern is still claiming to be the neutral, right? And well, so much for that neutrality. 17 Patriot systems might go to Ukraine allegedly from Switzerland, and on top of that, dear friends, reports are that Trump offered the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to buy 5 Patriot systems from the United States for Kiev instead of 2. And well, Merz, according to Wall Street Journal, agreed, but we'll discuss this with the leaders of Europe, because these systems cost a lot, by the way. I mean, at least $1 billion, right? At least $1 billion. It depends which generation of the Patriot we are talking about, right? And number of European countries already expressing their frustration because they don't want to pay for US weapons, by the way. They want US to transfer weapons for free or to pay for it from US taxpayers' money. And on this very topic, dear friends, we have this statement, this information from RT, that EU tells US to share the burden for Ukraine weapons. So the EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has welcomed US President Donald Trump's promise to send more weapons to Kiev, but said he can't describe it as American aid if European NATO states are fully bankrolling their initiative. And well, she basically demanded that US should do more and should send more weapons and more money, by the way, to prolong this proxy war against Russia. And many people are wondering, by the way, and on the topic of unhappiness of European elites with Trump, we have reports that Czech Republic refused to buy US weapon systems. France is refusing to buy weapon systems from US to then transfer to Kiev regime. But many people probably are wondering, what is the Moscow's reaction on all these latest developments? I mean, Trump's ultimatum, this new military aid packages, and so on. And well, Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, stated that Moscow will study statements of Trump carefully, and that's it, really. And we also have a statement of Shyu, by the way, former defense minister, current secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Let me give you his statement. This approach has long been promoted by Donald Trump, who during his election campaign repeatedly stated that this is not his war, and called on Europe to bear greater financial responsibility for its own security. Sergei Shoigu told the Kommersant. He also promised to force Europeans to buy weapons in the interests of the Kiev regime, refusing to provide free supplies. It is also coincidence. It's not coincidence that U.S. Permanent representative to NATO Matthew Whitaker emphasized that the days when Washington spent unlimited amount of taxpayers' money on aid to Ukraine are a thing of past, and now this burden lies on the shoulders of the people of Europe. That's the comment from Shoigu, by the way. Nothing critical, basically, about Trump, his decisions. I find it a bit strange that Russian officials, despite all the negativity that comes from Trump towards Russia, towards Russian people, towards Russia, towards Russian leadership, Russian political elites are exercising, let's say, restraint. I'm going to start hate this word, man, restraint. Russian politicians are exercising restraint, and but practically nobody is saying anything critical about Trump, which is, I don't get it. I don't get it, by the way. Trump is on Epstein list, right? He is not a person to be respected. And why Russian politicians are shying to say about Trump what they really think, I don't know. But it is what it is. Right? If you were expecting that Russian politicians, Russian officials will come up with some strong statements after Trump's ultimatum and all the other stuff, then answer is no. It's not happening. At least for now. Maybe at one point, Moscow will say, I mean, we really have had enough of it, and then things might change. But currently, that's how the situation is, by the way, right? And with all these developments, no one should be surprised that Kyiv regime is emboldened big time, by the way, big time. And every day we are receiving from Western-backed terrorist regime of Zalinski more and more strong statements towards Russia, threats towards Russia. And for example, Zelensky went to say that they are ready to use some extreme force against Russia. They will not hesitate, and Zelensky wants Trump to be on board with this. Right? Let me give you a short clip of his interview, by the way. So,
they're already being shipped. From what?
Sorry, this is not the video that I want to show you.
And all of America and Europe know that we want peace and an end to the war. But the Russians understand only force. So, only strong sanctions and only strong weapons. We are ready for action, for a demonstration of force. I remember that we had a powerful deterrence package before President Trump became president. I wanted America to sell us such a package, but it was not done. We talked to President Trump about these things. I would really like us to be strong. A demonstration of strength forces Putin to the negotiating table. It is not a fact that we will have to use this force. But if Russia knows about its existence, it is already a strong argument for ending the war.
So question is what he was talking about. What kind of force they are ready to use to force Russia to obey orders from the West. And people might speculate that he is talking about Zelensky is involved because of the deliveries of the long-range weapon systems, ATACMS, JSSMs, potentially Taurus missiles from Germany that maybe already being delivered to Kyiv regime. Yes, that's a possibility. Maybe he's talking about large-scale long-range missile strikes on Russia with all these additional long-range weapon systems that NATO will deploy to the battlefield while maintaining plausible deniability, because they're going to say it's a Kyiv regime, right, that doing these attacks. But in my personal opinion, I think Zelensky is hinting on something bigger, which is nuclear weapons. That's what he is talking about. And you know my take, dear friends. I said many times before that these extremely desperate globalists and their controlled regimes in Europe will go all the way. Will go all the way to harm Russia as much as they can, to destroy Russia, and they will use any means, literally any means, including nuclear blackmail. And if nuclear blackmail will not work, then actual nuclear attacks. And I know in the field of alternative media, many commentators are hesitant to believe that Western elites are that reckless to actually, transform Kiev regime into a nuclear armed regime. And the argument is that it is not possible that US or France or the UK will give nuclear weapons to Kiev regime. And I agree on that point that, of course, US not going to give no nuclear weapons to Kiev regime from its arsenal. UK will not do this. They're not going to give their nuclear warheads to formerly Kiev regime. And France not going to give no nuclear weapons from their stockpiles to Kiev regime. But what they will do, and I'm afraid already did, is they will use nuclear fuel, or let's say radioactive materials from Ukraine, by the way, from Ukraine, to build their basic atomic bombs, not thermonuclear weapons that are modern nuclear weapon systems, but basic atomic bombs that can be traced, in case of explosion, can be traced back to nuclear reactors that are operating on Kiev controlled territory, right? So I'm afraid they already used top radioactive materials from Kiev regime, build their atomic bombs. They have, I guess, number of these basic atomic bombs of low yield, which means 3 to 5, maybe up to 10 kilotons, which is a lot, by the way, right? It might call the low yield, but this is in comparison to modern nuclear weapons, thermonuclear weapons that have 150, 200 kilotons of power, and in some cases in a megatons even, right? And so, yes, that's what is going on, in my personal opinion. That's what Zelensky is hinting about, that Biden's administration was on board with this idea of deterrent, right? Nothing else can be even considered as a means to deter Russia. But nuclear blackmail is a whole different story, right? Nuclear weapons are scary stuff, by the way. And if there is any threat that nuclear weapons might be used against you, then you cannot ignore that. You just cannot, right? So I'm afraid that's what is happening, by the way. And after 50 days, after this ultimatum of Trump will expire, I'm afraid we're going to see public transformation of the Kiev regime into a nuclear armed regime. Ground for that is have been prepared already. So many Western propaganda outlets, by the way, were writing for many months about capabilities of Kiev regime to build their atomic weapons, right? Economist, by the way, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, plenty of Western outlets, by the way, plenty of Western media outlets were writing about this stuff. Ground is being prepared for that, and I'm afraid after this 50-day will expire, Zelensky might declare, maybe even before 50-day will expire, Zelensky may declare that they have nuclear weapons now in their disposal, right? That's what I think. I hope I'm mistaken, by the way, but I think they're gonna go nuclear, because there's no way, by the way, they're gonna have any more or less significant influence on the battlefield with whatever weapons they might be able to transfer to Kiev regime, long-range missiles, short-range missiles. Unfortunately, they can harm, of course, Russian militaries, Russian civilians, but they're not going to be able to turn the tide, right? But nuclear weapons are very different stuff. I mean, it's a whole different league, right? And unfortunately, I mean, Zelensky is, in my reading, by the way, he's clearly saying that they are ready to use this force, right? And Trump probably is on board with that. He is on board with that, right? And until it's not too late, maybe it will be better if Russia will take preemptive strikes, because we are talking about nuclear weapons, by the way. So I hope Russian leadership will calculate everything and to make sure that Kiev regime not going to be able to strike Russia with nuclear weapons. Hopefully, some preemptive strikes will happen with whatever weapons are needed. By the way, with whatever force, and Russia has a quite impressive arsenal in this matter, right? So something has to be done to neutralize this threat. Otherwise, we will face, if now there is talks about long-range strikes on Russia in 50 days, 50, 60 days times, and after that, talk is going to be about nuclear Ukraine, right? Nuclear regime and potential nuclear strikes on Russia. So we cannot allow this to happen, right? And when it comes to escalation with Russia, by the way, probably you already have heard reports that Trump allegedly on July 4th, when he had a phone conversation with Zalinski, told him to bomb Moscow and St. Petersburg, right? According to Western media outlets, by the way. Financial Times reported on that, for example, that Donald Trump privately urged Ukraine to strike deep inside the Russian territory, even asking Zelensky if Kiev could target Moscow and St. Petersburg if the US supplied long-range weapons. The July 4th call between Trump and Zelensky followed Trump's reportedly sore phone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin the day before. According to sources briefed on the matter, Trump asked Vladimir Zelensky, "Can you hit Moscow? Can you hit St. Petersburg too?" Zelensky replied affirmatively, contingent on receiving the necessary weaponry. And this is dangerous, isn't it? This is dangerous, by the way. Yet again, we already have enough factual evidences to be sure that Trump is clearly in the hands of globalists and Zionists under control, strict control of these influential groups, and we all know that globalists will go all the way in this war against Russia. And Trump was asked about it. Trump was asked about. This is one more reason, by the way. This report from Financial Times. One more reason why Russia should take preemptive measures to neutralize all possible threats that Kiev regime may come up with, and hopefully these preemptive measures will be taken, because time for restraint is over. I'm 100% convinced that Russian leadership have no more time to continue this exercise of restraint, because tomorrow they're gonna bomb us, for God's sake, with nuclear weapons, with atomic bombs, right? Do we want this here in Russia? Are we waiting for Kiev regime to, and the NATO, by the way, to bomb us with the nuclear weapons? We don't need this, right? So therefore, just take action, for God's sake, and neutralize whatever threats are generated by our enemies. US, UK, France, Germany, Zelensky's regime, all the others, by the way. Has Russia opportunity and means to take the actions? Yes. So what are we waiting for? That's my question on the matter. Things are very serious, by the way. Things are very serious, and I don't think anybody from us needs any additional confirmations that collective West is gone mad, by the way, and are capable of literally anything, right? But Trump was asked, by the way, about this report from Financial Times about telling Zelensky to strike Moscow and St. Petersburg, and he denied. He denied this claims. I can give you a short interview of short video of that. For example, that's their video, by the way.
Should Zelensky target Moscow or deeper into Russia?
No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
So, of course, publicly, what else he gonna say? But I believe Financial Times' report is correct, by the way. I rarely believe in reports in Western media outlets, but based on behavior of the Trump, I truly believe that he demanded from Zelensky to use long-range weapon systems. He basically prepared the ground for attacks on Moscow and St. Petersburg, right? And whatever long-range weapon systems will be transferred to Kiev-controlled territory, and of course, they will be operated by U.S. military personnel, but responsibility for strikes will lay on Zelensky. Zelensky will take responsibility for that, and that's why Trump told him that are you ready to take a responsibility? And Zelensky said yes. Right? That's what is happening. We did not have no comment, by the way, from Russian. I did not see, at least, any comments from Russian officials on this report. But yet again, for whatever reason, Russian leadership is hesitant to say single negative word about Trump. Man, I find it frustrating. Trump is insulting Russian people. Trump openly said that the lives of Russian people mean nothing. He insulted the Russian president on several occasions, by the way, at this point, and Russian politicians are keeping quiet. Wow, man. Wow. So yes, White House also denied, by the way. Trump himself personally denied, and White House or press secretary of the White House, Caroline Lewitt, also denied that Trump was demanding from Zelensky attacks on Moscow and Kiev. He was not demanding attacks on Moscow and Kiev, by the way. This long-range weapon system is going to be operated by U.S. militaries, right? We'll understand that. It's those long-range weapon systems going to be operated by U.S. militaries. They're going to use U.S. targeting data, U.S. intelligence, isn't it? Trump was basically telling Zelensky that you're going to take responsibility for that. Are you ready? That's what it is. And Zelensky responded affirmatively that yes, he can do that, right? He will take the heat. Well, things are going to escalate, dear friends. As I was predicting, a situation will only escalate, by the way, will only escalate until Russia will finally says, or Russian leadership will finally say enough is enough, and until Russia will use force capable of bringing Western so-called elites to their senses. Whatever that force might be. And Russia, yet again, Russian militaries, if they will receive order, are in a position to deploy necessary force, right? But meanwhile, Zelensky's regime is emboldened so much so that, well, they are completely derailing, by the way, at this point, Istanbul talks, and even Russian foreign minister Sergei Lavrov spoke about it. So he accused Ukraine of abandoning peace talks. Kiev is derailing peace efforts by rejecting the Istanbul negotiations format, which Moscow still considers viable. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Tuesday, and yes, by the way, why would not they derail these talks when they are emboldened tremendously, right? When collective West, by the way, Western ruling class, globalists, when all of them see that no matter how much they're going to escalate, Russian leadership is hesitant to use appropriate force in retaliation as a retaliatory measure, right? So they don't care, man. They think with these long-range strikes, with the blackmail, potential nuclear blackmail, and maybe even nuclear strikes on Russia, that clearly Zelensky was hinting about, and Western media was preparing ground for a long time, probably globalists thinking that they are in a position still, by the way, to achieve strategical defeat of Russia and to destroy Russia, basically, because they see that Russian leadership is hesitant to use whatever force is necessary to take out enemies, right? And the Russian enemies, by the way, are not those poor people that been kidnapped from the streets of Kiev or Kharkov or Odessa, by the way, and then thrown into trenches. Those people are victims, by the way, of the collective West and the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. Russian enemies, real enemies, by the way, capable enemies, let's say that way, are globalists, right? And globalist-controlled regimes in the collective West. That is Trump and his administration, British royal family and British aristocracy, right? And their puppets in the British government, right? And the same can be said about Germany, about France, about others. That's who are our enemies. Western elites, so-called elites. And did Moscow take even a single step to neutralize threats that are generated by these enemies? No, not a single step, by the way, right? Am I correct? Nothing, literally nothing. And they see it, by the way, and they are emboldened. So why would they be engaged in any talks with you when they think that they can, destroy you, literally? And share your opinion, dear friends, what you think about all this stuff. But well, Lavrov is, confirming basically that yes, Istanbul talks practically being derailed, and we should not expect a third round of negotiations anytime soon. At least that's where we are right now. RT is meanwhile reporting that well, while all this stuff is happening, by the way, there is a reshuffle, right, in Western-backed terrorist regime in Kiev, and the so-called Prime Minister of Ukraine resigns, Shmyhal. I reported about such possibility yesterday during the update, and now it is official. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal has officially submitted his resignation to the Ukrainian parliament a day after Vladimir Zelensky announced his replacement and named him their country's next defense chief. So Shmyhal most likely will replace Umerov on the position of defense minister. Umerov allegedly will be appointed as an ambassador of Kiev regime into United States, and position of Shmyhal or position of prime minister will go to, what is the name of that minister of economy or something? Yulia something. Let me find, by the way. Yulia Sviridenko, economy minister Yulia Sviridenko, will replace Shmyhal on the position of prime minister. I reported about this yesterday, so none of us are, of course, surprised by this news, but because it is official now, and Shmyhal submitted his resignation, I guess, it's worth mentioning this story again. To continue, TASS News Agency is reporting that Israeli strikes on Gaza killed more than 60 people in the past days. Crime against humanity committed by Israelis continues on a daily basis and has not stopped, basically, even for a day, since Netanyahu's regime began genociding Palestinian people. And unfortunately, world is so weak, so-called international community is so weak that, fascist Israel and fascist Israelis are continuing to genocide Palestinians with absolute impunity. That's what is happening. And next door to Israel in Syria, by the way. Probably many of you already know that there are significant infight going on now between Damascus forces and Druze community, Druze armed formations. Israel is actually helping Druze communities and are using Druze armed formations as their proxy, whilst very same Israel, by the way, is cooperating with Damascus too whenever they need it, right? And even rumors are, by the way, that Israeli and side and also this terrorist regime in Damascus are kind of in bed when it comes to topic of incursion into Lebanon. So allegedly there is some plans in place that Israel wants to provoke a large-scale conflict between Syria and this regime, by the way, this terrorist regime in Damascus and Lebanon, so that they will allow Sharia forces to establish control over the northern western parts of Lebanon, where predominantly Sunni Muslims live, and Israel will go in and occupy southern Lebanon and will genocide Lebanese people there in southern Lebanon, where predominantly Shiite Lebanese are living. Right. That's the plans allegedly that Israeli fascist regime is working on. Maybe it looks like a possibility. It definitely looks like something that Israel might pull off. But right now Israel is enforcing its will on Damascus in regards to southern parts of Syria, where Druze community basically and Druze military formations being used by Israel as their proxy to have a additional point of pressure on Damascus. Some fierce fighting is going on, by the way, between Damascus terrorist regime and Druze formations. Hundreds being killed already. And Israel is actively engaged, by the way. Reports were that Israeli Air Force is destroying heavy military equipment of Damascus regime. Several tanks being destroyed, infantry fighting vehicles, and so on. So there is escalation there. A few more news and I will end news segment. Donald Trump once again spoke about Epstein files, by the way, and said that he does not understand why people are even interested in Jeffrey Epstein case. More he talks about this topic, deeper and deeper he's getting in that swamp, right? And I think he's being politically assassinated, by the way. First by Elon Musk, who stated that Trump is on Epstein files, and secondly by Trump himself and his administration when they began covering up this whole Epstein story. Trump himself committed political suicide by doing so and continues, by the way, on the same track. And let me give you a video on that. Share what is your take. Why on earth Trump is acting this crazy? Why? So this is the video that I want to show you, dear friends.
Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah.
So he does not understand why people are interested in these files. Okay. Something is wrong. He's been blackmailed, by the way. He clearly is being blackmailed there. His administration, many key members of his administration being blackmailed. By whom, by the way, we can guess, globalists, Zionists, whomever, by whomever, but they are not acting adequate, by the way. Trump never really acted never really presented himself to be, really intellectual or very serious, decent person. He is none of that. But nevertheless, nowadays he's acting just extremely inadequate. And the only explanation I can come up is that he's just being blackmailed. I don't think he's that stupid that he cannot understand that he's committing political suicide while making such a crazy statement. That why people would interested in this matter. For God's sake, during the election campaign, Trump himself, dozens of times spoke about this topic. And we should believe that he forget about it, or anybody in his inner circle forget about it. No. But they've been blackmailed. Most likely, that's the explanation. They've been blackmailed, and that's it. That's why Trump's behavior and behavior of his administration is so irrational and abnormal, really. What is your take, dear friends? What is happening with the Trump? I don't know. And dear friends, I do have one more news to share for this news segment. If any major developments during the day, I will make a second news update, maybe live stream, maybe I will make some walk and talk video for Patreon community and Boosty community, and I will share some part of that video on YouTube and Rumble too. But let's see how the day goes news-wise, and I will end this segment on this report from Marty that EU's Kaja Kallas reveals the latest failure in passing new anti-Russian sanctions. So the EU has failed to adopt a new package of anti-Russian sanctions, EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said on Tuesday, expressing hope that the restrictive measures will ultimately be approved this week. The sanctions package was discussed at the meeting of the EU Foreign Affairs Council, but remains blocked by Slovakia. Kallas stated to pass their package, unanimous approval from all 27 member states is required. This is 18th package, by the way. This is 18th sanctions package from EU, and I think eventually they will pressure Bratislava to obey orders of Brussels, and this 18th package will be adopted. Question is why? What they want to achieve with this 18th package that they were unable to achieve with the 17 previous ones. And did they ever heard her say that it is stupid to do same stuff over and over again and expect a different outcome? But yet again, when it comes to puppets of the globalists, by the way, that being put in position of power all over the collective West countries, I guess globalists have specific requirements, when these puppets being chosen. They have to be tremendously stupid. They have to be bankrupt, moral and intellectual bankrupt elements, and also they have to be dumb as hell. And take a look at the leadership of collective West, man. That's exactly the characterization you're gonna see, with no exceptions. With no exceptions, by the way. Every country that is controlled by globalists formally are, being run by some tremendously dumb, degenerate individuals, right? And we all understand decisions being made there by globalists, right? These people only are put in position of power to sign up on the papers to legalize, by the way, basically all the policies that globalists want. We all understand, but nevertheless, man, I don't know why globalists are so sure in their invincibility that they don't care if people will start questioning, their own elites. I don't know. Anyways, dear friends, this is it for today's news segment, and hopefully you did find it informative and useful, dear friends. Let me now be engaged in a community chat, dear friends. Although before I start, let me thank Blorp for a super chat. I will add image now. That's what I'm gonna do. So yes, I did it. So Blorp, thank you very much for your super chat. Honey, I shrunk the president. This is the comment from Blorp. Thank you very much for $5 donations. And dear friends, because my channel is monetized on Rumble, you can actually use the Rumble platform during the live streams to basically donate to the channel, and also you can become a premium subscriber there. And so that's being said, dear friends, let's have a little chat now. I will scroll through comments, and whenever I will notice a question, I will try to be as informative as I can in my response. Once again, thank you all for your attention. And questions. Capital Q, by the way, before questions. I'm saying this all the time, but they are new members, isn't it? Sometimes new members are joining their stream, and them I did not know. But capital letter will make capital Q, for example, will make it easier to notice the question, because I'm scrolling like nonstop in the chat. Don Zugar is commenting, after conferring with Smoky Sally and other members of the chat stream, we have determined it's time for Putin to take the gloves off and get the show on the road. Do you agree, Levan? When it comes to taking gloves off, I was in support of strong actions from the beginning, by the way. I was never a supporter of restraint, really. Right? If it was up to me, I would use extreme force on the very first minute of the special military operation to make sure that everyone understands that they're not going to mess around, right? In the beginning of special military operation, now, if it was up to me, by the way, I would drop a couple of tactical nukes in some forestry area, by the way, on Q control territory, in some forestry, right? To make sure that no harm is done to civilians, right? And I will make statement that even if a single bullet will enter Kiev control territory from any country in this world, I would, next nukes will blow up in those countries. I would nuke them. That would be my message, right? From very first minute of the special military operation, because I think I really believe this is an approach that would work better, right? Maybe I'm wrong, by the way. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I would do, right? And if any one country, by the way, any one country, I don't give a damn which one, but if any one country would dare to check me on my warning, then okay, I would obliterate that country, literally, And if that would mean Third World War and the end of humanity, okay, I mean, no big deal, really, right? We're all gonna die one day, so it is what it is. Right? I don't think, by the way, that anybody would dare to check me on my promise. I just don't think anybody would dare to even think about that. But when I'm a fatalist, by the way, so that's how fatalists think. Whatever has to happen will happen, right? So you have to do what you have to do. That's how it is, man. And let's be real here. And did I ever said that I'm an angel or something like that? No. No, man. I want my enemies to be neutralized. That's it. I don't forgive. I don't forget her. And whenever I will have opportunity to retaliate on my enemies, I will, by the way. It might take 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, but whenever I will have opportunity to retaliate on my enemies, I will. That's how I am, right? And I'm not saying this is good or bad. I mean, that's just how I am, right? You might have different takes, right? You might be better Christian, let's say, and you might be capable of forgiving for the matter. I mean, for example, but I'm not, man. I'm not forgiving nothing to nobody. And I don't expect forgiveness from others, by the way. This is also true. I don't expect no forgiveness, by the way, And my enemies, they can try to kill me, and if they succeed, okay, man. I mean, this is life, right? Nidish Kumar is asking, if they go nuclear, what will happen to other neighboring countries of Ukraine? Well, when it comes to nuclear weapons, many people have difficulties to take in account that modern nuclear weapons are very different than original nuclear weapons, right? Because these original basic atomic bombs were built mainly, not necessarily always, but mainly were built on a fission reaction, right? When atoms being split and massive energy was released as a result of it, right? But modern nuclear weapons, and by the way, during the fission reaction, some isotopes are created with a tremendously long half-life, right? Thousands of years in some cases. So that's why basic atomic bombs are extremely dangerous in terms of radiation hazard, right? Certain areas will experience radiation for decades and decades and decades, and some aftermath will be noticeable even after 1,000 years. Modern nuclear weapons that are built on a fusion reaction, that's a sun's physics, right? Physics that is working in the sun when atoms being fused, as a result of which also massive energy is released, right? During the fusion reaction, there is initial radiation, obviously, on the spot, but give it 10, 15 years, and you might struggle to find any radioactive trace in the area, because half-life of their isotopes are short. In some cases, tremendously short. Like some isotopes will disappear completely in a matter of months, some in a matter of years. 10, 15 years, and you will struggle to trace back any radioactive hazard in a place. That's a nuclear fusion, right? So therefore, by the way, if it's come to nuclear, that's what we should keep in mind, right? When it comes to Zelensky, transformation of Zelensky's regime into a nuclear armed regime, well, it is technically, I mean, Western media did write about it quite extensively, isn't it? That Kiev regime is in a position to build atomic bomb. I mean, I think US, UK, France already built a couple of atomic bombs at least, right? Basic atomic bombs that are built on a fission reaction, right? With the Ukrainian radioactive materials. I think this is already being done. And it's only a matter of time when West will authorize Kiev regime to begin talk about its nuclear weapons openly, right? This might happen and most likely will happen in next 2 months' time, right? So if Kiev regime, or if globalists, if NATO, by the way, will use against Russia this basic atomic bomb, that means that, depend on yield of their atomic bomb, some significant areas will be hazardous for life, any life, for a tremendous time, right? But what will Russia do in response? Well, hard to tell, by the way. With this constant restraint of Russian leadership, I'm not even sure that if Kyiv regime, formally Kyiv regime, in reality NATO will drop nuclear bomb somewhere in Russian cities. I don't even know that Russian president will authorize nuclear retaliatory strike. I'm not sure about it. I mean, maybe Russian president has a principle that in no circumstances, no matter what is going to happen, no way he is going to authorize deployment of nuclear weapons. Maybe he has such a principle, right? And okay, I can respect that someone has a principle that he will not do this no matter what. But I just disagree with that approach. That's all. And I don't know what's gonna happen with neighbors of Ukraine. By the way, I mean, Russia not gonna retaliate anyway. So I mean, cloud from if NATO will use against Russia atomic bombs, then wind can take cloud of radioactive particles in any direction, including Western countries, right? So that can be hazardous for the West. But in terms of Russian retaliation, you know what? There were so many instances when, in my personal opinion, Russian president should authorize deployment of extreme force, and he did not. Then I don't think he will ever authorize deployment of extreme force. And that's a scary stuff, by the way. That's a scary stuff. That means if I'm correct on that, then that means I don't know. Maybe this war will continue literally. I don't know, for many years. At least there is anybody left in Kyiv-controlled territory to be mobilized. And after that, probably globalists will begin sacrificing other countries, right? Because if you're not going to deter globalists, and you can deter globalists only with nuclear weapons, let's be real, by the way, right? No Areshnik, no Iskander, Miskander, and their Kinjal, Minjal, and rest of their stuff. Nothing like that going to deter collective West. Only deterrent is a nuclear deterrent, right? You use nuclear weapons, they will realize that you are capable of killing them all, right? And they're out of scare, by the way, for their own lives, they will de-escalate. I mean, globalists, right? And their puppet regimes. But if Russian president is not willing to use nuclear weapons, then why would globalists stop? Why would they? I mean, if you were on their place, would you stop? If you can do whatever you want with impunity, I mean, would you stop? You would not, right? So they would not too. So that's it, by the way. Unfortunately, this constant restraint is become such a frustration for many, by the way, to me personally, too, constant restraint from Moscow, that even if we've been attacked with nukes, by the way, I don't think Russian president will authorize Russian militaries to use whatever force is necessary to eliminate enemy, man, right? Some might say, well, this demonstrates high, humanity of the Russian president and how good person he is, and he has the principles. Okay, man, okay. I'm not arguing with any of it, right? But for God's sake, man, why you need this extreme force if you are not willing to use it, man? Only way these nuclear weapons are working as a deterrent if you are capable of using it. But if your enemy thinks that you're not going to use it no matter what, then you don't have nuclear deterrent on your hand, right? Is my logic is correct, by the way? So I don't know. I don't know, man. I show you video, isn't it? Zelensky is openly talking about using extreme force against Russia. He has no issue with that, right? So, and in that video that I show in today's news segment, I don't think he was talking about long-range missile strikes, by the way, or drone strikes on Russia. I mean, NATO conducts these long-range strikes against Russia, like for how long now, right? while saying that it's not them, it's a key regime. But these long-range strikes are happening literally on daily basis. Literally on daily basis, Bob. And I report almost in every my update, isn't it, that Russian air defense systems shut down this many drones in this region, this many drones in that region. That's a long-range strikes, by the way, right? Zalinski was talking about some other force, and this other force is nuclear force. And I'm 100% convinced, by the way, 100%. I have no doubts that Washington and London already built from radioactive materials that they took from Ukraine, already built their number of atomic weapons that they will use against Russia, and Zelensky will just claim that it's them. They're not gonna hand over these nuclear weapons to Zelensky's regime. No way. I mean, they're gonna be in control of it always, and if it comes through deployment of these dirty bombs, then they will do it. Zelensky will claim responsibility, but and I'm sure that's what they plan, and there is high risk that that's what they're gonna do. But Russian leadership is hesitant to take strong actions, man. Even now, if Russia tested the nuclear weapon in let's say Novaya Zemlya nuclear testing site, even that might actually at least a little bit force globalists to begin think about some stuff. If Russia will just conduct testing of the nuke on Novaya Zemlya testing site, even that is not happening. So therefore, Russia, after Russian nuclear triad was attacked, by the way, I mean, only response that was appropriate, in my personal opinion, is a nuclear strike on the countries that were involved. That is US and UK, by the way. I don't give a damn what that will cause after. But if I was in charge, I will nuke US and UK straight away. Military facilities, by the way. They know where our bombers are. We know where their bombers are too. And I will take out a couple of their nuclear sites, right? If they will retaliate with the nuclear weapons, okay, we will retaliate too, and that's about it. And we will all die. But on only appropriate reaction on attack on your nuclear triad is a nuclear attack, nuclear strike back. And it didn't happen. So Russia don't really has a nuclear deterrent at this point, because no one believes that Russian president will use this force ever, right? And this is a big issue, by the way, big issue. Nidish Kumar is also asking question, Levan. I think Israel will not completely eliminate Al Julani forces for now. They don't want Iran to get strong in that region again. What do you think? Well, Israel definitely not gonna destroy Al Julani, this terrorist regime in Damascus, by the way. They're gonna cooperate, and they do cooperate. Israel just wants Damascus to be in check in regards to southern parts of Syria, right? Because Israel wants to occupy those territories, including Damascus itself, by the way. In their plans, in plans of Greater Israel, Damascus is also occupied, right? But now they are pretending Israel, pretending on not on Damascus necessarily, but on southern sides, southern regions of Syria. And on Damascus suburbs, let's say, where also certain communities are living that have some connections clearly with Israel, right? And so, yes, Israel will not eliminate this terrorist regime in Damascus, because yet again, Israel also wants to take southern Lebanon, right? Israel wants to take at least half of the Lebanon, Bob. So to do so, Israel, together with Al-Julani forces, they will attack Lebanon. They will split Lebanon, right? They will provoke a sectarial war again, or war on ethnic and religious lines, as it happened before. By the way, Israel has quite experience in doing so, right? And unfortunately, Christians were helping Israelis to commit numerous war crimes against humanity, and Lebanese Christians were most brutal groups that were operating during the civil war, which is a shame, by the way. I am shamed by this. I mean, how they call themselves Christians, I don't even understand, right? They were committing horrible atrocities, by the way, together with Israelis, right? Those so-called Christians from Lebanon, right? But nevertheless, I agree with you. And Israel and their Syrian terrorists, this Damascus terrorist regime, gonna cooperate, of course. They're gonna attack Lebanon, split Lebanon, and then when Israel will finish off Lebanon, they will. After that, yes, maybe they will take on Al-Julani forces in a big time. But yet again, one should keep in mind that this terrorist regime in Damascus is a Turkish proxy. And even though Turkish leadership is actively engaged in cooperation with Israel, even though some strong statements being made by Erdogan, but he is an Israeli bitch, man. We all know that, right? Turkish leadership are prostitutes of Israel and London. That's what it is, man. Entire Turkish political class is a prostitutes of Israel and a British aristocracy. That's true of the life, right? Like it or not, but that's how it is. And this will never change, by the way, right? London will never allow true independent forces to exist in political landscape of Turkey. It's not happening, right? And so even though at some point Israel might take on serious action against Al-Julani forces, we should keep in mind that yes, there is a Turkey too, right? And whatever will happen to Syria, and Syria is going to be split at one point too, right? Turkey will take certain parts, Israel will occupy others. Kurdish people may eventually actually get their own country in the northern eastern parts of Syria and get recognized actually as a Kurdistan or whatever they're gonna name their country, right? But Syria is finished too, by the way. I think Lebanon and Syria are done, unfortunately. And many other countries in that region, by the way. Okay. Bitter Pills is commenting, Levan, can you ask your YouTube viewers consider to going over to Rumble? Yes, of course. And I did, I did ask many times community on YouTube to join us on Rumble if they can do it. After all, even view numbers on Rumble matters because channel is monetized on Rumble. While on YouTube, channel is not monetized, never gonna be monetized, right? And if you can, dear friends, if you are watching this live stream on YouTube right now, whenever you can switch to Rumble, please consider to do it. It might be helpful. Thank you for your recommendation and the feedback. John Morley, UK, is asking, do you see Donald Trump Jr. saying the ethnic Russians did not want to be under Kiev back at the start of the war? I feel you have not seen it. You know what? I have seen maybe I have seen that video too. from Donald Trump Jr. I have heard many statements, right, in last several years from Western public figures, by the way. Many statements that were maybe making sense, in some cases definitely were making sense. But one thing is what people are saying, excuse me, for political or other purposes, and very, very different is what very same people are doing when they are in position of power, right? And quite often we are observing the situations when excuse me, dear friends, I got cold recently and I still did not recover completely. So no, I have to end. I have some difficulties to breathe, by the way, so I will end this live stream now. Excuse me. Thank you all for joining the stream. My apologies, dear friends, but I did not yet recover from the cold. So see you later.